For the past few days, lawmakers are meeting and passing a number of bills down at the Capitol, all while legislative leaders are continuing to wrestle over a final state budget. Joining us tonight to update us on how things are playing out at the Capitol is Senator Liz Krueger. She is the vice chair of the Senate Finance Committee and a representative from Manhattan. Senator, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
So what is going on down at the Capitol? Last I heard, still no deal, although we're hearing some dribs and drabs of what might be in the revenue package. Other than that, though, several $100 million apart at least.
We are several $100 million away from our final target, and of course the final negotiations are always the toughest, not just on some of the budget issues, but on some of the significant policy issues as well.
So, okay, let's start with some of what could be joined. I mean, right now when you come to the final push, there is some horse trading that goes on. My understanding, your conference, the Senate Democrats, are willing to sign off on this SUNY reform proposal that the governor is very strong about, very bullish on, but the Assembly Democrats not so much. Where does that stand right now?
That is still one of the contentious pieces. It is true that the majority of the Senate were prepared to do much of what the governor asked around the SUNY-CUNY changes, although we also have negotiated some changes in that. My understanding is the Assembly is not going along with that package at this time, so that is a huge bone of contention remaining. Education funding, of course, for K through 12 and colleges is still probably the big dollar fight going on. I'd say most New Yorkers want to put back as much money for public education as we possibly can. And you're right, it's all dependent on how the revenues are flowing right now.
Okay, so that when we come to the revenues, there are a couple of problems. One is we're still not hearing what's going to happen from Washington to about $1 billion worth of what's known as FMAP money, which is Medicaid money, essentially. We're hearing mixed messages, actually. The governor says very unlikely that all or perhaps none of that money will come in. But then we see Mayor Bloomberg in the city saying that he's willing to put about $600 million into the budget that the New York City Council and the mayor are expected to have a handshake on, perhaps as early as tonight. Can you tell us anything about what's happening with that money?
Well, we're all holding our breath right now as Congress negotiated a jobs bill which has the Medicaid money, what we call the FMAP money, in it. I'm going to lean towards being more optimistic that we actually will get that money from Washington. Our delegation has been consistently strong on arguing it's their top priority for the state of New York. So I'm going to hope that Mayor Bloomberg is right and that we can count on that $1 billion coming into our budget.
Isn't some of this a little bit dangerous? I mean, I understand that budgeting is an art and not a science frequently, and you don't really know, for example, you think you know how much will come in from, say, collection of Indian cigarettes sold on Indian land, but you're not sure because the Indians are very upset about it. So you could say, well, it'll bring us $500 million to $1 billion worth of revenue, but you just don't know. I mean, how long will this budget stay in balance, assuming we get one, and how high is the possibility you'll be right back here after the elections dealing with it yet again?
Well, you're right. Every year a budget is an art, not a science, and there are a lot of unknowns this year, but there are a lot of unknowns every year. What we do know is that revenues from tax collections appear to be stronger than we estimated they would be originally, and that's helping. We have the FMAP concern that we would have hoped would be resolved by now. If that doesn't come through, then we may very well have to come back to revisit the budget sometime in the future. The Indian tax, on cigarettes is a huge issue, but remember, the federal government changed the law so that you can no longer sell cigarettes by internet. So there's almost a guarantee of our seeing more tax revenue because of the federal law kicking in that helps ensure that people can no longer literally purchase cigarettes or get them delivered via internet, which means I hope that they stop smoking, but I suspect it will actually mean they go to stores to buy their cigarettes, where we do see increased tax revenue.
I think a lot of people, probably most viewers, are most concerned about what they will probably feel themselves, and what they might feel is the reinstatement of tax on clothing worth less than $110. Now, how real is that? We're hearing, again, mixed messages. The governor said this morning he expected, that was on the table, he expected between 10 and 13% of the deficit closing would have to come from some form of taxes, not just from the clothing tax, but that's going to hurt a lot of people. It's also your conference and the Republicans and the Democrats, and everyone says, we don't want to do this, and yet here we are.
And again, you are correct that is one of the final issues being fought out. The Senate Democratic Conference has been very consistent. We don't want to see any new taxes on New Yorkers, and we particularly don't like regressive taxes, and that kind of sales tax increase for low-cost clothing and shoes we would absolutely see as a regressive tax, and we're hoping very much that in the final analysis that's not on the table.
So actually that you're saying this is still up for discussion. It's not, of course, nothing's a done deal yet until there's a done deal, but are you still hopeful? Your conference is still negotiating to keep that off the table?
Yes, our conference is consistent that we do not want to see new taxes on hardworking New Yorkers, and we don't like regressive taxes.
So then what would be the alternative? Where would the money come from? I know also there was this talk about people, the very wealthy, people who make who contribute or make $10 million. I'm not actually clear on the details. Hopefully you could help me out there. Will no longer be able to claim these charitable contributions. That's in lieu of a millionaire's tax, I would expect.
Yes, all that would be doing is decreasing the deductibility for tax.